Hi students, and welcome to your next math lesson. Today we are in Chapter 7, Lesson 6, looking at patterns. We are going to spend 2 days on this lesson because we're going to do some of the work from the book, and then we're going to extend on that and do some work outside of the book. Your objective for today, students will be able to identify and extend patterns and sequences. All right, I want to start off with some vocabulary for today. Let's zoom that out quite a bit. All right. So there are two words that we need to look at for today. The first one is the word sequence. A sequence is a list of numbers that follow a specific pattern. So when you're skip counting, you are actually giving a sequence of numbers. You're following a pattern. Term is the other vocabulary word. A term is each number in a list or sequence. So I will be using both of these words today as we work through our objective. So let's start off with our first example. I am going to give you a list or a sequence of numbers. And you need to do two things. We are going to identify the pattern, and we are going to write the next three terms of the pattern. So those are the directions for our work today. We have two things: identifying the pattern and then writing out the next three terms. So for our first example, we have the sequence 15, 19, 23, 27, and so on. So these dots indicate that this pattern or sequence continues. Okay, numbers go on forever. So we have two steps. The first one is to figure out what is happening in this sequence. So let's identify the pattern that we say. The first question I always ask, are the numbers getting greater? Which would indicate multiplication usually, addition, sometimes a combination of two operations. Or are the numbers decreasing in size? Are they getting smaller? Which would typically indicate division, subtraction, or maybe a combination. So when I look at my sequence, my numbers are getting greater, okay? 15, 19, 23, 27. So likely we are either adding or multiplying. Now I know that with multiplication, the numbers get larger faster than with addition. So I don't see that we have a jump and then a bigger jump and then a bigger jump. I just see that they're kind of steadily getting a little bit bigger each time. So that makes me think that we're adding. How can I figure out what we're doing and how much we're getting bigger by? By doing the opposite of what you think. So to get from 15 to 19, what am I adding to 15 to get up to 19? Well, you can either subtract the two numbers or you can count up. So from 15 to 19, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I'm adding 4 to 15 to get to 19. Now, just because we found something that works for the first two terms, each of these is a term, does not mean that that's automatically the rule. You have to test that rule, I say, a minimum of 3 times. Okay, so test it once, twice, a third time, and then, you're probably good for the rule. So let's see if I take my next term, 19, and I add 4 to it, will I get to 23? We're testing it right now. So 19 plus 4, 20, 21, 22, 23, does work. Let's try it one more time. From 23 to 27, does it work if I add 4? 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. There we go. So I've tested this pattern and it works. So I know that my pattern is to add 4. Some people call that the rule. Either way. So our pattern or our rule is to add 4 to the sequence. Now we need to write the next 3 terms. So remember, each of these is a term, and I'm separating them with a comma so that I can tell what's what. So what we have to do now is just take the last term that we were given and keep applying the rule. Okay, we're extending on this pattern. So I would take 27 plus 4, and I get 31. So the next 3 terms would be 31. And then I'm going to add 4 to that. 32, 33, 34, 35. Add 4 again. 36, 37, 38, 39. All right. So I've identified my pattern, and I've extended that pattern to get my next 3 terms. All right. Let's take a look at another sequence. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. So our sequence this time is 28, 25, 22, 19, etc. That means it goes on and on. So let's ask ourselves those same questions. What's happening to our numbers, and by how much? Well, I see this time that our numbers are decreasing. So that indicates to me maybe division, maybe subtraction, or maybe a combination of 2 skills. Well, they're not decreasing by all that much, just kind of a little bit at a time. So let's see if I can figure out the change between the first and second term. Well, if I count up from 25 to get to 28, that's one way to do it, or I can count backwards if I'm good at that. So 28, 27, 26, 25. So if I take 28 minus 3, I get 25. Let's continue testing that. 25 minus 3, 24, 23, 22. Well, that gave me the 22, so that worked. 22, 21, 20, 19. Oh, there we go again. So I see that it is working. Now I'm going to apply that. So my rule or my pattern is subtract 3. And now let's extend that pattern. 19 minus 3 is 16. 16, keep it going, minus 3 is 13. And 13 minus 3 equals 10. So I identified the rule or pattern, and I extended by listing the next 3 terms. Okay, let's do another one. Now I have 3, 6, 12, 24. Are my numbers getting bigger or smaller? They're getting bigger. Okay, so they are increasing. Let's see. I'm going to check, see if addition works. 3 plus 3 equals 6. Let's see. Is 6 plus 3 12? Well, wait a minute. No. 6 plus 3 equals 9. So plus 3 cannot be my rule. It worked the first time, but it didn't work again. That means I have to try something else. Well, if it's not addition, maybe it's multiplication. 3 to 6. Oh, wait a minute. I can do 3 times 2 to get 6. I'm going to test that out. Is 6 times 2 12? Yep. Is 12 times 2 24? So our rule for this sequence is to multiply by 2. And now let's extend that pattern and keep multiplying by 2. Now this multiplication might get a little tricky. You might have to use some scratch paper. But I would take 24 times 2 and get 48. 48 times 2 equals 96. And 96 times 2 equals 192. Now, I did that very quickly. okay, because I figured it out earlier, but you get the picture. All right, one more for today. We're going to do the same directions, identify the pattern, and write the next three terms. So now we have 256, 128, 64, 32, etc. All right, big numbers in the beginning of this sequence. So are my numbers increasing or decreasing? They're decreasing, meaning getting smaller. So that maybe makes me think subtraction or division. Now, if I subtract, it has to be for each time. So let's test it. 256 minus what will give me 128? Let's figure that out. And to figure it out, I can subtract the two of them to find the difference. $128. Well, look at that. So could my rule be to subtract 128 over and over? Well, wait a minute. If I apply that and do 128 minus 128, I don't get 64. So it's not subtracting 128. But wait a minute. If I cut 256 in half, I get 128. And I know that because when I subtract it with 128, I get 128. That's the same thing as cutting it in half. Cutting it in half means I divided it by 2. So let's check to see if that's the rule. I'm thinking maybe dividing by 2. So is 128 divided by 2 going to give me 64? Let's figure it out. Looks like we're on the right track. Aha, it does. So when I took 128 and divided by 2, I got 64. So I'm thinking that if I divide 64 by 2, I get 32. Well, if I double 32, do I get 64? Yep. So my rule is to divide by 2. What are my next three terms? Let's extend that pattern. Half is another way to say divide by 2. So what's half of 32? 16. What's half of 16? 8. And what's half of 8? 4. All right, so our vocabulary words are sequence and term. A sequence is a list of numbers that follow a specific pattern. The terms are the numbers in your list. Your directions might be to identify the pattern or rule and then write out the next couple of terms in the pattern. Remember that you could have a single step like we saw today, or you might have more complicated rules or patterns, such as doing 2 operations to get to the next number. For now, we're going to stick with the 1 operation, and I will see you on our next video. Thanks for watching.